Hey guys, it's Chad with The Sitting Solution, and today we're going to go over a question from Dimitri. Dimitri has this kind of painful position in his shoulder when he internally rotates it. He's an acro yoga instructor, I believe, so he's always carrying people overhead, and I'm guessing something happened with the position where it was very vulnerable and got into a poor position and something got strained, and we're going to try to fix it. So we want to keep in mind that this position is one of internal rotation, and this, if done chronically and repetitively, can lead to serious injuries and things like shoulder impingement, a rotator cuff tear, a torn bursa, things of that nature. And this is also the thing that many people who are sitting all day long and kind of in this forward flex position, they're injuring themselves in that position as well because of just the general compromise of stability in that position. So what we're going to have you do, Dimitri, is take note of the level of pain that you're feeling in that shoulder when you're internally rotating right there. You know, maybe even give yourself an objective number. What's that pain on a scale of 1 to 10? And what we're going to do today is take you through 3 different movements, and after doing each movement, we're going to do them repetitively. I want you to go back to that position where you're feeling that pain and ask yourself if that pain is better, if it's worse, or if it's no different. And that's going to give us some good indications of the direction and the load that we need to stress that shoulder, because that shoulder got injured in some certain direction on some certain load. Typically the answer to fixing this is finding the opposing direction and load and doing it repetitively, and in doing so, everything sort of gets rearranged in there and you can restore the natural position of your shoulder. So if it's worse, obviously that's not the direction we want to go. If it's a lot better, a whole lot better, and it completely abolishes your pain, you can pretty much stop right there and not do anything else. Just keep doing that one exercise. And if it's kind of indifferent, we're just going to keep exploring what's going on, okay? So first thing we want to do is a standing extension stretch. And I'm going to show you this from the side. Just standing here, take that injured shoulder and just kind of flick it back, real firm. Think about taking your tricep, back of your shoulder, and throwing it back, right? And do this about 10 times. And when you are doing it, really relax the shoulder. Just kind of let it go and throw it back. Right there. And after doing that, we want to go back and check that position. Is that pain better, worse, or no different? If it's better, then that's your answer. Keep doing that 10 times every 1 to 2 hours for the next 3 to 5 days. If it's no different, we move on. If it's worse, good information to know. So next one I want to show you is external rotation repeated. And for this, it's really nice to position yourself in such a way that your humerus here is kind of perpendicular to the ground and straight in front of you. So you can elevate something up towards a counter like I have here, or you can sit down in a chair and sit at a desk. But whatever you do, just try to position your elbow such that it's directly in front of you and you're not compromising your body or leaning forward or leaning back in any way. So what we're going to do is just take our hand and our opposite arm and then push over as far as we can. We want to get all the way to the end range, so we don't want to stop here. We want to go all the way over and then back. About 10 times with all of these. All the way over and back. All the way over and back. You'll notice what you don't want to do is lean the body, right? We don't want to lean. We want to keep all the movement directly in the shoulder. You also don't want to straighten out the elbow, because in doing so, you're avoiding true external rotation in the shoulder. So nice and easy, again, in range. Once you've done 10 of those, let's go back to this, right there. Is that pain better, worse, or no different? Again, if it's better, good. We've got the answer. We can probably keep doing that for the next 3 to 5 days, every 1 to 2 hours for 10 repetitions. If it's worse, that's good information because we know that's not the direction to move it. And if it's no different, we move on to the next one. So the next one is internal rotation. So, we've done extension, external rotation. Now we're going to explore what happens to that shoulder when we internally rotate it. So we're going to take the hand, grab the wrist with the opposite hand, and think about pulling this wrist to this shoulder right here in that direction. So right there and then back. There and then back. And one thing you want to make sure of is that you do not bend the elbow, because we're not doing any internal rotation there. We're just doing elbow flexion. And you also don't want to do this body bending thing, right? So it's just straight up pulling back, okay? So something that we find helps a lot of people with this is to grab a belt. There's my belt. And just throw it over. This is another way to just ensure you're getting the good motion. And take that belt and then pull it up, right? And just as long as you feel a firm stretch of internal rotation in that shoulder. So again, 10 times here, nice and relaxed in that right shoulder. And you're going to come back and ask yourself, is that pain better, worse, or no different? And I will typically say that since you're pointing to the fact that that internal rotation is what hurts, this is going to make it worse. So if you do find it makes it worse, go back to one of the other two that made it better. So the idea here is to pick one of those three movements, the one that made your pain go away the most, right? That abolished it, and then stick with that, right? 10 times every 1 to 2 hours for the next 3 to 5 days, and see if that can completely abolish the pain that you're having for the long run. So something else you want to consider here is getting some key muscles around the shoulder, the rotator cuff, the middle trap, getting all that involved again, activating those muscles to help with recovery. So a couple things I want to show you here. The first is a shoulder W, and I also want to say that when you're doing these active exercises, you want to do things that do not really get you into too much active shoulder flexion because you're probably not ready for that yet. So real simple thing is a shoulder W, just standing, feet directly under the hips, palms up, thumbs pointed out, 90-degree angle, squeeze the glutes, nice tight stomach, and then we're going out and making a W, and then returning slow. And try to keep the tension on there, and return slow. And the fault here is you don't want to kind of straighten out the elbows, just keep a nice, good 90-degree angle. So with that, really just kind of keep doing it until you feel like you're getting tired. That could be 10 repetitions, it could be 30, depending on the resistance band. So 2 to 3 sets throughout the day with that. Another thing I like to do with acute injuries like this is horizontal retraction on a foam roll. And the foam roll is nice because it really allows you to get your shoulder blades moving back again the way they're supposed to. You're just going to take the arms here, band in front of you, and just take the TheraBand out, and then return slow. And this is a good way to get that kind of, it's more of a passive retraction here because gravity is sort of pulling the scapula back, but restoring that normal motion of the shoulder. And again, 10 to 30 reps. And I would encourage you to use a lighter band, maybe even a yellow band right now, because it's just all about movement. Movement is what you need. And then, so for some people who may not have a foam roller, you can definitely do this on the bed. It'd be just as fine. So once you're out of that acute pain, and that acute pain could be 3 days, 5 days, 2 weeks, it's important to think about your position when you're doing any overhead motion. So again, this is what hurt you. This is kind of what you're doing all day. I'm guessing that something got compromised in your position. So we have these cues that we like to give people in order to create more stability and get the entire shoulder unit working together. And one thing we often see in overhead athletes is this internal overhead position when they're going overhead. So if they're, you'll see people, pressing a kettlebell, for instance, and they're internally rotating, right? Or the same thing with you, maybe you may have caught somebody in a very vulnerable, internally rotated position, and that's that impingement, that ball and socket kind of slamming on the bone part where the tendons get injured and inflamed and eventually hurt, right? So you want to think about getting the lat more involved in everything you do. So when you're pressing overhead, for instance, instead of being here and internally rotating, get the lat involved. You can see the difference. You can even have a buddy come up to you and touch this right here and make sure it's strong and stable. But the difference between this and that, just a small little tweak, is huge, right? When you're doing like a push-up, for instance, on the ground, you can think of the same thing. Hands directly below the shoulders. If we internally rotate, and that would be elbows kind of pointing out, it's a very vulnerable, compromised position, right? Imagine your hands are on plates, and you're screwing those plates out, and that's going to get that lat involved and create more stability. So as opposed to this, think about screwing your hands in the ground coming up. It's a completely different position in the shoulder that's going to lead itself to what you want, right? Strength as you're moving as opposed to vulnerability with injury. So those are things that you can think about. That was a lot I covered, but pick one of those movements. Do it 10 times every 1 to 2 hours. Incorporate these resistance bands exercises and go back to your position and think about some areas or some cases where you may have been vulnerable. So I hope that helped you out. If you're listening and you have some shoulder pain, those are also some things you can try. Dimitri, if you have any questions or comments, let me know in the comments section. And if you found this helpful or useful, please share. And you can always find more about us at sittingsolution.com. Thank you.